Ani and good day. My name is Adele Loosemore and I'm a Treaty Indian from Sheboygan. This video is the first in a new series called News Clippings, in which I show you an old newspaper article and talk about some of the things that are mentioned in it. The one in this video was written in 1986, but the events that it talks about happened in 1919. Now and Then was a column narrated by Allan Dryburgh, in which he shared memories of his life experiences. His stories often included people from our community. The column appeared regularly in the Manitoulin Expositor newspaper, published on Manitoulin Island. The Expositor logo shown here is from a February 1978 edition. The newspaper now also has an online version. Allan, born in 1907, was a grandson of John Lowe and Marianne McEwen, who also were ancestors of the Lowe families of Killarney. Allan's mother, Hannah Lowe, married William Dryburgh. They raised their family on Manitoulin Island. Here's a close-up view of the image used with that article. It's a photo taken from the water, looking at the east end of Channel Street. In his column, Mr. Dryburgh said, "This picture was taken in Killarney, just east of Jackman's store. The two houses in the back or across the road, I do not know. I see in the picture a lot of gasoline barrels on a dock just west of the store. At the time this picture was taken, the gasoline was probably brought to Killarney by steamboats and may have been retailed to customers or bought individually." The house that this arrow is pointing to is the Jackman home, just across the street from their store. Thomas Henry Jackman moved to Killarney in the early 1880s to teach school. He met and married Matilda Thibault and eventually became the owner-operator of the store her father had established. In the next paragraph of his article, Mr. Dryburgh said, "I remember going to Killarney in the fall of 1919, shortly after the First World War. We went down on Mr. Joe Rock's tug, the Russell Rock. My father and mother, a baby sister, Helen, and a cousin, Hugh MacDonald, who had just returned from overseas, made the trip. I forget where we stayed, but likely at Uncle Charlie Lowe's. The next morning, we left in Uncle Bill Lowe's fish boat for Philip Edward Island, where we were comfortable in Campbell's cottage." Two of the Tyson brothers and a Mr. Rock were there trapping mink. They left us a hind quarter of venison in the back shed. It's not surprising that Mr. Dryburgh ran into Killarney people at Philip Edward Island. That's why so many of the bays around that island were named after our families. And the Tyson brothers were right next door at Chickenashing, where this arrow is pointing. Here's a closer view of that area. You can see that there's a notation on the map at the entrance to the creek. It says Tyson's Indian Village. The Tyson family had been at Chickenashing since at least the mid-1870s. Other families from Killarney lived there too. The Prews, the Solomons. There were 4 boys in the Tyson family. They were all grown and married by 1919. Tom married Mary Elizabeth Bocage. John married Alice Bateman. Ned married Angela Delia Rock. And Bill married Clara Bernadette Rassico. Any 2 of them could have been trapping at Philip Edward Island. Allan Dryburgh said Mr. Rock was with them, but there were plenty of Rocks in Killarney. I don't know which one was trapping with the Tysons. Then Mr. Dryburgh says, I remember in those years, and even in the early 1930s, a farmer's deer license was $1, but only one in a farm family could obtain this farmer's license. I don't know if our ancestors worried too much about having a deer license. I think they probably just harvested what they needed. In the 1920s, and probably earlier, many of our ancestors were issued Indian identification certificates to use when trapping beaver and otter. Maybe the same kind of system was in place for hunting deer. Now and then. It was a column enjoyed by so many people, thanks to Allan Dryburgh sharing his memories. If you would like a copy of this article, you can download it from my website, killarneyhistory.com. There's a link to the article in the description box below this video.